He was awakened 4 hours later by the rattling of his doorknob, followed by a few scrapes and a click. The door eased open, and a black figure slid noiselessly inside. Meyer lay in his bed with a clear view of the thief, heart pounding, temporarily paralyzed. He was completely unarmed. Indeed, he'd never shot a gun in his life. The only object remotely resembling a weapon that he possessed was the Santoku knife in the kitchen drawer. The cooking area, of course, was inaccessible, being on the opposite side of the doorway. All John could do was feign slumber with one eye open until he discerned the burglar's plan. The beam of a flashlight played over the room, its white disk making jerked sweeps. It came to rest on John himself, discovering to the prowler his blanketed form. The light froze along with the robber. He clearly hadn't counted on this development. Quiet footpads approached the bed, then stopped as the prostrate figure was closely inspected. Satisfied that the sole resident of the apartment was asleep, the ski-masked man stole over to the television and began to monkey with the wires. Taking advantage of the man's distraction, Meyer slowly rose from his bed. Creeping stealthily, he contrived to get within 3 feet of the intruder before being detected. The man whirled around, bringing the heavy flashlight up to use as a bludgeon. Jonathan was the quicker of the two, sending his right fist into the center of the masked face. It was a true shot. The man staggered. Meyer followed the first hit with a hot left hook, and the dark figure slumped to the floor. John jumped at the light switch and slapped it on, showing a completely black-clad body struggling to his hands and knees. Moving promptly, he grabbed a roll of packing tape, pinned the fellow on his stomach, and bound his hands behind him. He tightly wound the tape around the ankles as well, effectively incapacitating the burglar. Sweating from his efforts, he sat down and phoned the cops. While waiting, he grew curious. He cautiously stepped over to the wriggling captive and pulled off his ski mask. The recognition was instantaneous. However, it took Meyer a minute or two to recall exactly where he'd seen this particular young man. Then it hit him. The guy had been a passenger on that near-fatal flight. The captain was sure of it. He'd studied every face on its way out, and they were all etched in his mind. The same flaxen hair and sky-blue eyes had shuffled past him that night. It was plausible that there were thousands of men across the country, perhaps a few hundred more in Northern Europe, who bore a marked resemblance to this man. But Meyer would have staked his reputation on his hunch. On a whim, he addressed his prisoner. "Hey, have you been on a plane lately? What's it to you?" The man averted his eyes. "You were, weren't you?" "A couple of weeks ago, on a flight to Salt Lake City. The plane almost went down halfway there." The burglar paused, scrutinizing Meyer. "How did you know that?" "I'm an airline pilot, a captain. I was flying that plane." The man looked incredulous at first, then shook his head. His identity would be no secret once the police arrived anyway. Unbelievable. Effing unbelievable. He had no more to say on the matter, and neither did John, so they sat in companionable silence until the cruisers came. 4 officers tromped into the room, all clearly amused at Meyer's amateur capture. One of them clapped him on the shoulder. "We'll take it from here, sir," he grinned. In fact, the job had been done so thoroughly that the cops didn't bother with handcuffs. Hoisting the foiled robber up, they carried him down the stairs and into one of the cars. Their buddies at the station would certainly get a kick out of this one. After the arrest, there were no further break-ins at Jonathan's apartment, much to his relief. He bought a home theater system on a shopping trip with his daughters a month later, hooking it up with no hesitation. He even indulged in a little tasteful boasting to one of the other tenants. The whole building was aware of his status as a solid citizen, so he had nothing to fear from that quarter. Well, obviously, the young man that he saved was not exactly an innocent soul, and he goes on to discover that the other passengers were not what they seemed. The choice that he made that night impacts people he knows, his friends, his family, and, in fact, one of his daughters. So we're kind of left wondering if he may have acted in haste and maybe should have let the plane go down.